Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. We are so glad that you've joined us today, whether you're watching this online or listening to it on the go. We are glad that you are here. Joining me in the studio today is Mr. Brian Sevitz, and then we also have Mr. Aaron Reeves. Timothy Reeves? I can never remember. Timothy Aaron Reeves. And we'll get to him here in a little bit. But before we do any of that, we have to give you the sponsor of the week, which Mr. Brian Sevitz has in his hand, and it is the
fresh picked tomato.
Bob the Tomato.
Yeah, Bob the Tomato.
Why is that the sponsor of the week?
Well, for one thing, I've canned like 95 tomatoes this week into pizza sauce, pasta sauce, chili sauce, all those things. But I just thought it's summertime, and this is the time where we get stuff like this. And I don't know, this is part of our life, like it has been ever since I can remember. I know some people don't have gardens or access to stuff like that, but I think it's cool that inside the front doors of the church almost every week in the summer there's either tomatoes,
squash,
zucchini. Yeah, it's really cool. People just share.
There was cucumbers not that long ago.
Yeah, and you never know what's going to show up, but every week somebody comes early and drops off some of their extra stuff. And for those people that don't have gardens or anything, things like that at their own home, it's nice just to be able to pick some up.
It is. So if you ever see fresh produce just sitting out in the lobby, if it doesn't have a specific sign that says "Don't touch," it's for you to grab, for you to take and enjoy. And that's just people in the congregation sharing with kindness what they have with others. And we're really grateful for all of you who do that and who bless others. So there you go. The sponsor of the week is a tomato. I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of kickback for that. Maybe some pasta sauce. Maybe. But we're glad you've joined us here today. Let's recap the last week. This past Sunday was a great Sunday. And we were in our series called Pretty Ugly People. We've started the second week talking now about what do we do and how do we develop healthy, God-honoring relationships. And so we talked about seeking peace with those around us. Brian, how did your Sunday go? Music was great.
Yeah. This was one of those weeks practice was not so great.
Ooh.
And then we made some adjustments, and Sunday I thought went pretty well.
No power outages during the service, although there's many in the week.
Yeah. We had, it was a little bit of a different Sunday because I put in a song from the Metrical Psalter, which that was different for some people.
I loved it.
Yeah, where we sang
Did you like it?
Oh, yeah.
Sang Psalm 103. And then also, basically sang a poem prayer from St. Francis after the sermon.
We were getting kind of liturgical.
Yeah, we were
getting a little liturgical this past week. I didn't grow up in like a liturgical church, so I've always enjoyed those elements when you add them in. Singing the psalm, though, I was telling Brian on Sunday, I had never done that. Singing scripture I've done before. We do that every so often, but singing through a whole psalm I thought was just a cool experience. Have you ever done that before?
I hadn't myself, but one of the things that me and Lydia talked about was, so when she was in Israel, they sung psalms like in Hebrew. And one of the things she had to talk about, she's like, you forget when you're reading through it, this is poetry, this is music. And you kind of get lost in the analogies, but then whenever it's put to music, the analogies make a lot more sense than reading them as literal scripture.
And I'm like, how long did that take somebody to take the Psalms, put them into a meter that rhymes and still holds on to the metaphors and everything? Because usually you lose at least one of those in the translation. And I've got, of course, the whole book of Psalms that is put to a meter to all different tunes that people would recognize. But not all of them are as good as others. I mean, I was looking through the imprecatory psalms, and I'm like, that would be interesting to sing that in church.
Brian's going to break out the jig, an Irish jig tune, a barroom jig soon. No, I thought it was great, and it was cool. You mentioned this, that it felt like every verse the congregation got a little louder,
Yeah.
a little louder because we got a little more confident in the words that we were saying to the tune. I just thought that was really cool. So if you missed that service, if you missed that sermon about seeking peace with those around us, we'd encourage you to go check it out at tlcc.church. A reminder that we are called to be peacemakers, and some principles that you can follow of how to accomplish that and what that looks like. You were in the service. From your perspective, how did Sunday go? You don't have to sugarcoat it for us.
I think Sunday went really well. I enjoyed both the song service and the sermon. But Sunday specifically, it was interesting at the end of the day, like after service, conversations that in our household that spouted from the sermon specifically. Because when trying to seek peace, one of the early thoughts that come up is, boundaries to keep peace up. And one thing that we really had to get into is that a boundary to seek peace is not 100% in someone's favor. You have to, there's give and take whenever you want to seek peace. And so finding that as a way to seek it was common talk that rest of that day.
And you and your wife are starting out too with a family and kind of setting that up. What were you gonna say?
Well, one of your points there, that chart or something talked about like isolation is not peace, and I think that's kind of what you were talking about. And I tend to be it wasn't isolation. I don't remember that. Anyway, you pull away.
Yeah.
Just to keep the peace. Well, actually, that's not keeping peace, because internally, there's still not peace in that relationship.
Yeah, you can attack or you can retreat. And both of those are not forms of peace, even though you feel like you're either winning or avoiding it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It is an interesting concept, especially in today's culture, when you can look at, there's so many disagreements, there's so many fighting, there's so much in order for you to be okay with me, you have to agree to these things that I believe in or agree to. And it's like, well, no. So if we're going to have peace, what does that actually look like? And it's not you stay over there and I stay over here, but having a conversation and how do we reconcile.
And in my relationships, not only friendships, but even in my marriage and all of them, one of the things that I try to make clear is there are times when you have to step away. But you have to start the process of stepping away from a solution with the acknowledgement and the intent that you're going to come back and talk through the problem. Because sometimes you're heated and you're going to say something you didn't mean to say, and it needs to be solved. And as long as you recognize and actually come back, it's an interesting balancing act between all that.
And you said it. I was just thinking about in a marriage context, because it's very easy to just be walk away and be like, I don't want to talk about this right now. And you might need that space, but with the intention of, we got to actually deal with this. Well, I didn't mean to get into marriage counseling and family dynamics, but if you did miss that service, it does bring up some interesting conversations. We'd encourage you to check it out at tlcc.church. All right, we got to give you the updates of the week, the TLCC top 3, the top 3 things that you need to know going into this coming week. And they might be a little repetitive, but they matter, and we want to give you some updates. So, Brian, what's the top 3?
Yep. Yeah, they are kind of the same things we've been talking about, but that's what's going on, so they're the top 3. And the first one is the pool party.
Yep.
Saturday.
This Saturday.
Yeah, we hope it doesn't get... stormed out again. I don't want to say anything against the rain, because the rain's been really nice and we've needed it. But we hope we get to have the pool party at 7 o'clock Saturday at the Aquatic Center. We've paid for you to get in. And you can even bring a friend if you want. I think we can have up to 300 people or something.
Well, if we have more than that, what are they going to do?
We can bring
they
as
can't
many
stop us.
Well, they can. There's a fire limit or whatever. But
I think it was up to 300.
Second thing is XYZ Ice Cream Social. So that's for our 55 plus age group. And that's this coming Sunday evening at 6 o'clock. And Sarah was saying, just to remind those of you who committed to bring a dessert or ice cream, to do that.
Please don't forget.
Yeah.
They need you to bring it.
And then the following Sunday is our whole church party. We're calling Barba Community. That's not our term. I stole that from a church I was at on my sabbatical, but I liked it. I figured out a lot of people don't know how to pronounce that.
It's been
I've
difficult.
heard it a lot of different ways.
Barba community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're providing the hot dogs and buns and drinks, and we're asking you to bring a side dish or a dessert just to throw in with the meal. And if you want to be a part of the competition, we need you to let us know. You can comment if you're watching this online, or send us a message, email, whichever way you want to do it. But let us know, and there'll be a prize for the winner. And it has to include some kind of barbecued meat in your competition.
Is there going to be a second place prize? Because my macaroni salad's taking the first.
Well, we talked about that, and if we get a lot of people that want to participate in the competition, we might do a second or third place prize. If there's not as many, we're just going to do one first place prize. So there's your top 3 that you need to know about. Saturday, we've got the pool party coming up, and then the XYZers are going to have their ice cream party coming up, and then later we're having our barbecue community, which will be a potluck dinner. And if you want to participate in the competition of cooking some kind of barbecue that will include meat, we'll have that happening that night as well. So there you go. There's a sign-up sheet for that contest in the lobby, and also in the main service room by the guest welcome sign.
Yep.
All right. Well, we wanted to bring you back on, Aaron, because you have finished your internship. Technically, your hours are done.
With the school, yeah.
Technically, with school, your hours are done. You're going to hang around for a little bit longer, but I want to just give a chance for me to ask you a few questions about your experience, your take on the church, and just your overall view on some of the things that you've gone through this summer. So first and foremost, what has been something you've enjoyed about your time at Timberlake Christian Church? And then without sugarcoating it, what's something that's been challenging about your time this summer here at the church?
So one of the things I've enjoyed about Timberlake is something that I enjoyed even before the internship, and that's just the community. Before the internship, me and my wife tried to come here as much as we possibly could. There's some Sundays that we're just we'll watch it online. But when we did, it was when we would come the next week, it was noticed that we were gone. And so that was always nice, like feeling like we were actually wanted here. But on the internship, something that's been challenging, and I've really appreciated the challenge on, is speaking up. Because it's always hard for me to express my opinion, because I don't want to come across as rude or like I'm overstepping. And throughout the internships, especially, you guys and the rest of the leadership has really invited me in and accepted the input that I've had during meetings and when we're working on projects, and it's helped me build the confidence that I do know what I'm talking about sometimes, and whenever I'm wrong,
sometimes
and whenever I'm wrong, you guys were willing to correct me and show me which direction to move to get it right. And so that's been a challenging thing, but I've also really enjoyed during the internship.
Is there something about this church, because every church is unique and different, is there something about this church that has been different than the churches that you're used to growing up, and maybe something that you've appreciated that's different, and something that's like, oh, it's taken some used to because it's different?
It's kind of the same answer to both, and it took me a bit to get used to how much of a cycling there is between the different people who help with like music, especially like on Sundays, because the churches I'm used to, they have a set worship team, and there may be like 2 groups that rotate on and off, but the worship team here just has people that rotate on and off because different drummers play the drums different ways, different guitarists play the guitars different way, and so you're able to not only have that community in the church that is active and participating in it, but you also get to experience multiple different types of worship music in different fields. And so I've really enjoyed that. But it took a while to get used to that, because growing up you're used to the consistency. And I also appreciate that there is both modern music, like modern worship music, and hymns. Because I grew up in a very hymn-heavy church. And then from that church, went to a church that was only the newer music, only like the praise music. And sometimes you just want to and sing some I'll Fly Away on a Sunday morning. But it's been nice being able to have that mix of music.
Well, the reason I looked at Brian is because we have this conversation every so often about, do you have one set group? Do you try to pursue quality and keep it, not quality, but a certain level of like, this is what we're going after? Because some Sundays when you have a flute and a salt, how do you say the psalter? Psalter. It's not a saunter.
It's from a psalter.
A psalter, yeah.
A psalter is the boat.
But from the Psalms, a psalter. And then, other Sundays you've got a electric guitar lead, rocking it out. So we had that conversation a lot. And to be honest, I feel like every time we talk about it, we can land in different spaces. Because you can understand, like, the benefits of both.
There are pros and cons to our approach. And it's shifted some since I've been here. I mean, we've always blended things because that's, when I was hired here, like that's the mandate I was given. Was we're polarized. We've got this group that's like traditional early morning riser group, and we've got then the latecomers, all modern. We hate hymns, and they're like, neither one of these is healthy. But I mean, after 15 plus years, you're like, that can get to be a rut we're in too. So that's the evaluation, and that goes back to what you were saying earlier too. Like, one of the things that you've been a part of is we invite each other into those conversations, partly because, I mean, he's a musician too and he leads some, but I want to know the pulse of the congregation. Like, are we too diverse? Like, there's a good, diversity is good as far as style, but like, we can't be everything, so there are constantly, well, not constantly, but I'd say once a year or twice a year, we sit down and have that conversation about what direction are we heading.
There's definitely consistent evaluation on it.
Yeah.
And it's different whether or not I'm in the congregation singing along or if I'm in the drums. Because like the Sundays that I've gotten into it the most have been the Sundays that we have like those high energy praise songs, and then we go into that old worship hymn following it, that energy, just the flow through it, and I get into it. But it's a different feel both times.
For those of you that are hearing and listening and watching this, I think one of the takeaways for you to know is that we do have we want to head in a certain direction. We want to do things well. We want to praise God. We want to include people in it. But we also are questioning and constantly evaluating, and there's some convictions that Brian, you've landed on, and convictions that the church has landed on, but we're still figuring out and constantly evolving on how do we best worship as a group together. And I guess I think it's important for you to know the people who are leading it are constantly thinking through, praying through, working on how do we do this together. So it's not we have a set rule book and that's the only thing we do, and we're never going to do anything different. Like,
there's somebody one week, and they weren't intending to say anything that was offensive or anything, but they said something. I think the phrase they used was, well, once in a while you throw them a bone. And this was in regards to me putting a hymn in the service that day. And I kind of got defensive, or maybe went on the offense there, saying that's not why I picked that song. And I explained this, and this goes back to what you were saying about the diversity. Like, both services every single Sunday, I see sometimes 3 generations of a family sitting in a row together. I want each one of them to be able to participate. Now, certain weeks maybe more lean one way than the other, but if we're a multi-generational church, that ought to be reflected in the way we plan. And I mean, we do the same thing with our sermons too. I mean, different weeks are maybe going to speak more to a certain demographic than others, but from week to week we're thinking about all those groups. And I do the same thing with the music. this week was, I don't know what I was aiming at this week with the target, but I guess it's just, I think to pick one target, and this was one of the recent conversations we had, and say, I'm just going to plan everything toward 20-somethings, misses the mark of what the church Sunday morning is supposed to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And really that kind of goes back to this whole conversation that we had on Sunday about seeking peace. Is you can be at peace with those of different generations, worshiping alongside people that may have different tastes and preferences than you, when the heart is right and when the heart is focused on somehow in some way I'm going to worship God collectively with this group. And as long as we're doing it well and focused on doing it well, I think that's what matters the most. Mm-hmm. Aaron, what are you most excited about? You're about to become you're about to become a dad. How do we say that? Are you?
I think
you're technically, well, no, I mean like your child is growing already.
Yeah, but
you're not.
My wife's the only one.
Yeah, she's the one. Okay, so you don't have any responsibilities. What are you most looking forward to? Your wife is how far along now?
23, 24 weeks.
We're over the halfway mark.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about? What are you looking forward to? What are you scared about? What are you feeling about this new adventure?
I'm ready for, and we can say her. I'm ready for her to be here.
It's a girl.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm nervous about being a dad because, so in ministry, I take the scripture very seriously about that if you were to cause one of these little ones to stumble, it'd be better for a millstone to be tied around your neck and cast into the depths of the sea.
Yeah.
I try to live in reverence of that passage just constantly with everything I do, and that is something that I weigh with all my choices. And as much as I have to constantly consider that when I'm interacting with youth and other people outside of my household, I'm soon going to have one in my household. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little shaky.
And they get to see behind the curtain of what everyone else doesn't get to see too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that makes me a little nervous because I'm kind of reevaluating, am I doing everything right? Where do I need to adjust? But there's a lot of memories that I'm ready to make. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that my dad did with me when I was younger that I'm ready to do with Ari. But yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But
Brian, when you had you didn't have him, but when Jessica had Preston and you became a dad, what was the realization, the moment that hit you? Because I feel like every dad has a moment of okay, I'm a dad. Sometimes it's in the hospital, sometimes it's later. Did you have a moment of the weight of responsibility hit you of oh my, this is going to change everything?
I think it was in the hospital. I remember having multiple moments, so I don't remember the one moment. Mm-hmm. But usually, I loved nap time because I would let him, curl up on me, and we both have a nap at the same time. But those were the times when there's nothing else going on, there's nothing on TV or anything, where I'm responsible for this person. Mm-hmm.
This
more than anything I do in ministry here at the church or anything else, there's more weight to that.
Yeah.
And now we're getting to the point where it's
you're releasing him.
Very, it's weird because he just turned 12, and it's now you have to start loosening your grip a little bit, and it's okay, he's going to a sleepover, he's making his own choices. I have no idea what he's doing with these other, preteen boys tonight, but it's just, there's these different seasons and they all have weight to them. And just like you were saying a while ago, you just constantly make adjustments. You're not going to do everything perfect. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know what that would look like to be, the perfect dad, because, we can all think about things we do better. Yeah. But it does feel different. Like you said, different than anything else with you that you do with anything else. There's more weight to that than being a professor at college, because there's responsibility to all those things, and with our flock here at church, but when it's your own, it's different.
And like for me and Lydia, what's been really difficult, and a lot of responsibility that's hit ever since she got pregnant, was the fact that this is coming off the back of a miscarriage. And because like whenever we first decided to start trying, it was really quick, and we were really excited because like there's like things that are like, oh, your first time, it's going to take some time for her to have a kid, and we were pregnant, and it was great, and we lost it. And then there's all these, like the doctors and the books are like, yeah, right after a miscarriage, it's easier to get pregnant because like the hormones and all that, and it just didn't happen. And it took like I think 6-ish months of constant trying because like we wanted a kid. And so it was hard, and then we had kind of given up, like it'll happen when it happens, but we need to not get our hopes up anymore. And then this one came along, and there's been a lot of excitement through like every step, especially at 20 weeks, being able to feel her move. Like that was very exciting. There's just dread that I have to keep away because what if? But you can't live by what ifs, and that's what we got to keep remembering.
Well, we've been really grateful for you, and Aaron will be around for a little bit longer. He's got school starting up, and when that happens, then his time as officially with his internship will end here. But you guys aren't moving back to Oklahoma for a little while, so we'll still see you around. And you can still spot him by his pink hair and yellow glasses, and just be sure to thank him for his work and his service here and the time that he spent and giving it to the congregation, helping me and helping us here as we go about different ministries. All right, I want to give you the blessing of the week as we end. This comes from a book called A Church Called Tov, and this is a church about peace, a book, about peacemaking and being a church of peacefulness. And they had a section in here that I thought was just good that I'd like to end on today. It was talking about what do I specifically do in order to help make peace and be at peace with those around me. And it was, the author writes about a professor at Oxford, Teresa Morgan, who decided to use her gifts in a certain way, and she wrote this letter and they included it in this book. She said this: I didn't see myself as a priest in my parish or a lecturer at work, but as someone living faith in several places. Bit by bit, a few ideas began to germinate about how someone might be a priest in and for their working community. I would not involve talking about religion very much unless other people wanted to. Most of my colleagues were not religious, or were religious but not Christian. I respected them personally. I respected their religions and other communities. I did not plan to give them indigestion by telling them over lunch what I thought they ought to believe. It seemed to me that ministering at work should be more about showing than telling. And here's the part I want you to focus on, the practical application of being at peace and bringing peace to those around me. She writes this: day by day, I would try to be attentive to the people around me, especially if they were in need of practical help, encouragement, or just a listening ear. I would speak out and act, if necessary, against inequality, unkindness, or injustice. I would try to live in harmony with my colleagues and students and to foster forgiveness and reconciliation whenever we fell out. I would look for ways of teaching, writing, taking part in meetings, or doing routine administration that made my institution, her working area, a more loving and peaceful and joyful place, and helped it share those qualities with the wider world. Finally, I would say every day to God, not my will, but yours be done, and wait and see what God did with my obedience. And that was a practical plan that she had for bringing peace to particularly her workspace, but wherever she is. And I think Practically speaking, being at peace with all people as far as it depends upon you means, God, not my will be done, but yours. How will you use me today? So I pray that will encourage you, but also challenge you to have that same prayer. God, how do you want to use me today? And how can I bring your peace to those around me? We love you guys. We hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you here next week on the Ripple Effect Podcast.